But I think we are facing other paradox when we are imagining a world where space and time are discrete, like kind of particle atoms or quantum quanta for that matter. Because if they are discrete means actually that there are bits that are separated. And again, and right now you have these, maybe you will say that because I'm a philosopher that I think like that, and so I'm not concrete or anything, but if we have two atoms, two things, that I'm tempted to ask, what is in the middle? So what makes the link? Right. What makes the glue? What makes them exist in the same world?
The answer is nothing, yeah.
Exactly, and when you say the answer is nothing, my tendency is to say that, in fact, if you see that there are particles, like it's because there is an agglomeration, but in fact, if you look inside, the fact that they are linked, it's just a question of intensity. Mm-hmm. And so intensity, that will come back to the idea there are waves and that they are not discrete particles. So I will be more inclined to be on the side of waves and intensity of waves that give the appearance of discrete particle, even to talk about space and time, because I think, in my opinion, what I see, that there are less paradoxes than, that at least we can go beyond this paradox that we face with because the paradox we face with the idea of a world that is just wave, the paradox we face are just the fact that we can't calculate. Because we have limitation in calculation. We say, oh, we can't, at the end of the day, we can't calculate because there are no bits. But on another way, I think what we win, what we earn when we can calculate is lost when we enter into what could be space and time and what could be the relation between those bits, etc. And this time we are facing harder paradox. Like you can't go beyond those paradox. Like it seems almost impossible. So what is the glue? What is it?
Well, there are a lot of paradoxes. In quantum mechanics, actually, which you think everything is discrete and continuous. It's discrete as particles, but it's continuous as waves. There are actually problems with going to infinitely small distances. To make a measurement for an infinitely small distance, you need infinitely high energy. And if you have infinitely high energy, you'll get it's infinitely high mass and you get a black hole collapse. So there is a Planck scale where according to orthodox quantum mechanics, it looks like maybe space and time start to become meaningless or get lumpy, or you get into trouble if you try to you can't go beyond that to even finer, even smaller distances. Oh, and another thing I thought I should mention, I think this is Islamic philosophy or somebody's version of it. Is there something called the kalām? Well, I remember studying this a long time ago. There is a branch of Islamic philosophy where, in fact, you do postulate that, I think it's at least time is discrete. I'm not sure about space. And God is necessary to go, God has to intervene at every instant of time to go to the next instant of time.
Yeah.
Without God's intervention.
Basically, I will say that God is the glue that makes time being a tissue instead of particles that never touch each other.
That God is intervening all the time to keep the universe in existence and functioning.
Yeah, because if he wasn't there, there would not be glue, so there will not be a coherence. So there will not be something that follows something else.
Right. Whereas in Western traditions, God is not so intimately involved. Maybe you just choose the initial he or she or whatever. God chooses the initial conditions and the laws of time evolution, and then the universe just starts functioning on its own. And God can be outside instead of continually intervening to make the universe happen.
But just the fact that we need God, if we postulate the granular view about space and time. So the discrete view on space and time that we need in this case, at least in this case, we need a God that is like continually intervening to make things actually relate to each other, even if it is granular. So something could happen. Yeah, I think
that's one theological tradition.
I think it is just because that doesn't work like that. and so it was one of my arguments to say, I would say it's more waves, because even when we say in quantum mechanics that things on a certain aspect are waves and another aspect are particles, discrete particles, it's also because this process that we call the collapse of the wave function. So that at one moment, when we arrive statistically, and when there is a superposition, statistically, that will say like that will like fix the waves, like make them so intense going in one direction, that it makes the particle exist. But the particle is just like we'll say a node or something like a center of multiple waves that cross each other, and at the end so going in the same direction that we can say it's even the arrow of time. That's the reason why when you go at the level of the subquantum, the quantum time, there is no time anymore. I mean, the arrow of time is not going in one direction or another, because the arrow of time suppose the causal principle, and the causal principle suppose actually the particles, the discrete particles that are composing our bodies and all what is around. But I think in a way we still have to choose about what is more fundamental. And obviously the mathematician or Stephen Wolfram and your friend, they tend to choose like the particles. Yeah. But I will choose the waves, is what I'm saying. And even if we say waves and particles, and they are both, I agree. But still, at one moment you have to choose what is more fundamental in the way that, you know.
Yeah, well, usually people used to think that space and time were given, that they were fundamental, right? And now there are attempts to deduce space and time as emergent from entanglement of qubits. There are also people now, good people, questioning quantum mechanics. After 1 century already of living with quantum mechanics and all its paradoxes. For example, Roger Penrose, I believe, stated that he thinks that quantum mechanics is wrong or it's incomplete. Anthony Leggett, another Nobel Prize winner, I think Tony Leggett has made statements like that. I actually met both of these gentlemen at different meetings.
Yeah. I'm very interested in Roger Penrose's intuitions.
And there are problems with infinity in mathematics, because the infinities that Cantor can imagine, and now the infinities that set theorists imagine, are even bigger than the infinities that Cantor imagined. And they really become very theological, and you ask in what sense they can exist even in the Platonic world of mathematical ideas, let alone in the physical world. But it's conceivable that God can, Leibniz talked about the labyrinth of 2 labyrinths, the labyrinth of, I think, free will, and the labyrinth of the continuum, which meant that it was very problematical and paradoxical. And but, God could have a mind way beyond our powers. God could be higher order infinity. And another way to put it than my wife likes to put it, my wife Virginia, she said God could have an oracle for the halting problem, which means power beyond any computer or any algorithmic. And it could be, and there are a hierarchy of oracles getting more and more powerful.
But you know what, I think when talking about God, and something that we already mentioned, but maybe we didn't develop it, especially when we were talking about Leibniz. I remember very well. And Leibniz and determinism and indeterminism and things like that. And God, to put it in a certain way, I will say that the only thing that limits God is the fact that he can't limit himself. He can't authorize its own limitation. And so if he were to know everything, for instance, in the future, it's like if he was programming the future, so limiting the future. Therefore, if he was to know everything about the future, in fact, it will be a limitation of his power. So that's the reason why he left us with free will. That's my interpretation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? See, it will be a limitation in the way for God to know everything.
Yeah,
because if he were to know everything, that means he will see a limit in everything that will limit him.
You get into contradictions. Although if people believe the multiverse, I don't know, one thing that can happen is when there's a contradiction, the universe splits into two. On one side one way, on the other side the other way. There are lots of imaginary ideas that might just be real for all we know.
But what was interesting with the idea of multiverse is not the fact that there is in itself multiple universes, because, okay, if you say there are multiple universes, at the end of the day, you say the sum of all those universes is just the universe. But what is interesting is that the universe will be a machine to produce continually new universe at any time. And that is very different than to say there are just numerous universes. And that is a real problem.
Yeah. Well, the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics in some ways is the most straightforward because it's saying the equations are all there are. So what happens when you make a measurement? Well, the universe splits into two, or into many universes with different values of the result of the measurement.
But again, I think we're not going to enter into that because it will be too complex for just our little dialogue. But the very concept of measurement in quantum mechanics is something really twisted, I think, something a little bit biased because in fact, they say measurement, or they say the guy that observes, someone is observing. And I think at the end of the day, there are some that defend what I agree with will be that it's just the interaction. It's just that there is an interaction, and the interaction creates but there are always interaction because we are in a world of interaction. So
right.
There are
you interact with the environment at least.
Exactly.
No system is complete. It's perfectly isolated, only in a Gedanken experiment. Well, I'm not a physicist, but quantum mechanics offers many paradoxes, and one way out is to say that it's only a temporary stage and that our understanding will improve, hopefully, in the not too distant future.